Look at this delicious cream of potato soup. I tell you, if you want a yummy tasting soup that's just so delicious and it's so simple to make and healthy, give this a shot. Oh, that's just yummy. Hello, welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this episode, we're going to be making a cream of potato soup. I'm going to show you a neat new way to make cream of potato soup. It's going to blow your mind. It's tasty, it's full. This is a perfect cold weather dish too. It's really rich and inviting. So come over this way and I'm going to show you all the goodies that we're going to be using to make cream of potato soup. Okay, now let's go over all of our ingredients. What we're going to need is going to be about 3 pounds of potatoes. I have here about 3.5 pounds of potatoes. Once they're peeled, they'll be down to what we need. A couple of medium-sized carrots and a medium onion. Because this is a white dish, I kind of like everything to sort of look white in it. Of course, the orange won't, but that'll be cooked in so well. It'll be just specks of orange. And of course, the white onion's nice because it mixes in so well, people don't even notice it. But the flavor of it makes this dish so very rich. About 3 cloves of garlic. We're going to be using about 1/4 of a stick of butter, some salt, 2 cups of chicken broth. Now you can use vegetable broth for this if you are a vegetarian, so that works real well for that. Back here I have some heavy cream. Also, we're going to be using some milk in this dish. And we have mustard, white pepper, and as far as these go, this is more to the taste. Now I'm going to give you some measurements later on in the dish when we do this, but essentially what I'm going to be using is roughly a tablespoon of the white pepper and maybe a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of mustard. Alright, so it's really sort of a tasting. You have to taste it a little bit, add some seasoning, taste it a little more, and let the dish evolve and grow. So if you like the flavor of one of those, then go ahead and increase it for your dish. Don't feel bad about that. Now let's get right on to peeling our vegetables so we can make this yummy, tasty dish. Okay, let's get right on to how to work our vegetables. Now, if you're not used to slicing, then this is going to be really helpful for you. Also peeling potatoes. And I'm not going to peel all of these in front of you. I'm just going to show you how to do one, and then from there we're going to cut to a break and let you finish up for prepping yours. But there's a little device on the market. It's a vegetable peeler. If you have one, use it. They are wonderful things, and they will peel a potato quite easily. You simply run it down the side of the potato. Isn't that sweet? Very easy, and it picks up very little meat from the potato. Another way, if you don't have a peeler, if you have a nice paring knife. Now on a paring knife, when you're going to do this, what we're going to be doing is using the thumb and the knife, and the thumb is going to be in near proximity to the blade, so you want to be very careful. And what I want to be doing is, see how my thumb is here? I'm going to slide the thumb and the knife together, so the thumb never moves toward the blade like this, but they just move together. And the idea there is for my knife doesn't go too deep into the potato. My thumb becomes a guide. Isn't that swift? And I can do a potato lengthwise like this if I want, or I can work it in a spiral and just take the whole skin off the outside in a spiral motion, like so. So a couple of different ways for you to do, and at that point my finger did move a little bit toward that blade, but yours really shouldn't. See what I'm doing there? And that just keeps me from diving the cutting edge too deep into the meat of the potato. That's all my finger's doing. Like I did right there. When the finger came off, it went a little bit deep. Alright? So that's how you would pare that skin off of your potato. I recommend just very gentle motions with your knife and small amounts, and be patient. When you're learning how to pare, it does take a little bit of time, but once you get good at it, it doesn't really take a lot, okay? And this is something I was doing since I was a little kid, so I got used to it, but then I got out of the habit because these things are really just so darn quick. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and quickly remove this skin. I'll show you how we're going to cut this up to be cooked. Now, cooking time. If you cut just large pieces of your potato, in other words, halving them, and that's all you do is just cut it in half, then it's going to take some time to cook that guy down. So what I want to do is I want to half it lengthwise, just like this, very gently. Slide your knife down and forward. Now, I want to take these and I'll either divide them into 3 parts, depending on the size of the potato, or into 2 parts. Now this one is a medium-sized potato, so I'm just going to use 2 parts. Right down in there, and that's simple. Now, all I have to do is cut about 1 inch long slices out of that potato. And this gives me a good size piece of potato to cook, and they're all very much the same. The ends will be just slightly smaller, but usually not enough so to matter. So that potato right there is ready to cook, just like that. Remember when cutting, now there's a couple ways you need to hold this blade, and something you might need to know. Your chefs are going to tell you pinch the blade with the thumb and forefinger and wrap these other fingers around the handle like this. And this gives you what's called roll control. The blade won't slip this way or that way because you have a firmer control of it. When you have it back here, it's more prone to roll. Okay? Now, when you have your hand over here on the potato, to keep it from getting cut, you don't want your fingers forward like this when you're holding it. Turn the fingers under with the fingertips facing back, and this part of the knuckle right here needs to be straight up and down. And that way you can use it as a guide. See there? See how my thumb is behind the fingers in a little crab motion. And that way we can cut safely. So there's your how to cut potatoes technique. Now, once I cut up all the rest of these potatoes, let's restart the film. If you would, go ahead and pause here, and we're going to move right on to the next part, which is how to handle that onion and make perfect dice out of it. You're going to see some other things happening in this show, because what I am doing is making a mashed potatoes for a mashed potato show, but also we're going to use those wonderful mashed potatoes for our cream of potato soup, so it's important. Let's go over here and cut. There we have all of our potatoes chopped up in our pan. So what I'm going to do here now is just fill this with hot water and put it on top of a high flame and bring it to a boil. And I'm going to show you in just a little bit how to check this to know when they are perfectly done for mashed potatoes. Now, on how to handle cutting up an onion. And what I want to do with this little guy is to make it perfect little square pieces out of it. Strange, we're going to take something round and try to make it square. So the first thing I want to do is cut off one of the ends. Of the 2 ends, which do you cut? Do not cut the root end. Leave it intact, because onions have a tendency to weep, which means to exude juices much more from this end of the onion than they do from this end. And it's just the way that the onion structure works. It allows the juices to fall right out of the onion when you cut that root off. So the idea there is to not produce any more of the sulfuric fume that causes you to fry than, it causes you to cry any more than absolutely necessary. So what we want to do is to reduce that fume, and to do that we're going to cut off that stem end. You don't have to take off a whole lot, just a thin layer of it, and get rid of that. And on these outer layers of the onion, I can see that that outer layer is quite thin. So we're going to take it off. And I just need to cut into it lightly. Put that back. And don't feel bad if you feel that you're wasting just a little bit of that inner part of the onion. In parts of it, it's like on mine, it might be really thin. And if that's the case, you certainly don't want that layer. It doesn't have a tendency to cook up as well. There we go. Now, get that out of my way. Okay, we have something here that likes to bob around and roll around a lot because of its shape, and it makes it a little more difficult to cut. So what we're going to do to make this easier to handle is on the side of the root, just like this, I'm going to make a cut straight down. And I'm going to turn this around and do the exact same thing again. Just like that. So now I have 3 sections. 2 sides and 1 center. Let me show you what we're going to do with these. I'm going to take my first side here. It's the smallest one. So it should be the hardest to work. And what I want to do is to make a cross cut, just like so. There we go. So I've separated that into 2 parts. Nice and neat. Now running lengthwise from top to bottom on the onion, I want to make some cuts. Now when you're making this cut, where I put my finger on the other side, keep that blade in contact with the board until you're away from your hand. You don't want to cut yourself. Let me show you that again from a better angle. Okay? Down, finger on the other side, and back. Down, finger on the other side, and back. I'll turn it where I can see it better again. And this is going to give me perfect dice when I cut this. This is the best part of it. Get it in there. Okay, we have perfect dice, all the same size, very uniform. This is good cutting right here. Now, that little piece, not a problem. Just a double cut, it's ready to go in the groove. Okay, now, something you'll see me doing occasionally, and this is what you want to be careful about when with it cuts the knife care. If you see me do this, understand something, it's never in contact with that edge. Never, never, never. When I do that, my finger is curved up, and I'm running it down the back edge of this, pushing the stuff off like so. It looks fast, and it looks like I could cut myself, but I know how to keep that finger back. If you're going to push something off of your blade, a much more safe way of doing it is like this, okay? So if there's whatever is on your blade, to push it off, just go down away from the edge. Now I do the other because I've been doing this for so long, it has become habit. Now this side was a little thicker, so I want to make 2 cross cuts on it. And then we're going to do that same thing. We're going to come down. This makes cutting an onion much, much easier. I removed a section, doesn't matter. Now, all I have to do is make cross cuts on all of this, and again, my perfect dice. There we go. Now, that center section, this is where it actually gets a little bit easier, because all of the sections are running vertical like this, instead of running this way where it's flat. We can now just simply cut some dice with this. And I'm going to run my blade right through the center of it, up to but not through that root. Isn't that simple? And then, while the root holds it together, all I have to do is just make my dice. There we go. There's a couple of little cross pieces up toward the top. It's not a problem. Now, I can take all of my onions. We're ready to put these into a pot, and I'm going to cook this down with a carrot, and I'll show you how we handle that carrot in just a moment. There we go. Onions ready to be cooked. On the carrots, what I want to do is to use a basic vegetable peeler on these. You don't have to do this, but I like to get that outside off of it because it does look a little bit rough, and sometimes it doesn't cook up as well. There we go. So the vegetable peeler is quite quick and very convenient. Also, if you like strips of carrot in your food, this is a great way of doing it. There we go. Now, for our carrots, all I want to do on these is simply shred them. And I recommend the use of a box grater. If you don't have one, any grater will work. Start with that tip in, and just drive it right into it. We're going to shred this carrot. Watch out for the fingers, because these graters can take off some skin. When it kind of gets short, I just give up on it. Yeah, just a little more. For the flexible tips, holding it like I'm doing here is the easiest technique I have found. When it gets a little bit thicker, turn it over in your palm and it'll hold steady. So, 2 medium carrots. We've got that shredded out. Now these are ready to go in with the onion that I started. And what we're going to do is cook these together. A little part of that top, get rid of it. Okay, now all we have to do now is mince up that garlic. Mincing garlic isn't really a difficult thing to do. Let me use a different knife, The important thing about the technique I'm about to show you is in the knife shape itself. The knife needs a fairly straight edge. You don't want too much curve to it. You don't want it to be too long, maybe 8 inches. You don't want a knife that is not offset. You see how the edge here is offset from the handle? It goes down further from the handle. You need this offset here because you're going to be using a rocking motion, so you have to be able to pull the knife up like so. And I'll show you from an angle like this. And without that right there, you're not going to be able to bring that knife up to the right position. Alright, let's start in on our garlic. We're going to use about 3 cloves here. Get some of this carrot on my hand also. A bit orange at the moment. See how I give them just a light twist? And I can break that paper right off of it. So, not something that's too terribly difficult. Now, for our mincing, I want to get that orange off of my hand. For mincing, first let's remove the scabbed end from where it is attached to the root. And I just want to get rid of that. Right? Now I want to crush each of these cloves. Now the reason I'm crushing them is because if you go trying to cut these, they're going to bob around all over the board. They'll roll around on you. If you crush it first, they'll stay in place and allow you to cut them. Just like that. Much more convenient. Now, this technique, let me show you exactly what I'm doing. You've always heard said by chefs you need to hold that blade up here like this. But for this technique, it doesn't work that well. You need to move your hand to the back of the handle back here. What's going to keep this blade from rocking is the fact that you have your fingers up here, and that keeps this motion under control. From there, you've got this up and down motion here. The side-to-side motion this way is controlled by these fingers, and you just start moving the knife back and forth. The important part, that thumb. Keep him tucked under, just like so. If you don't keep the thumb under, you're going to get cut, okay? So, when you're doing this, now those larger pieces will sometimes try to evade cutting. Just work them down, and once you do, the smaller pieces will cut easier. What I mean by that is what I'm about to show you. You can speed this up. See, I've got that blade out at an angle away from me. You can angle the blade either way, and sometimes it'll give you a little better cutting action. Alright, now, see how that's getting minced down really nice? I'm going to do that one more time. This is just a regular mince right here. That's what I would call minced. And that's nice little pieces that are about 1/8 of an inch or smaller. And what I want to do is reduce this a little more, so most of the pieces are about 1/16 of an inch or smaller. There we go. Very tiny. They look like coarse ground Parmesan cheese. Okay. Now I'm ready to take this. And another thing, you see me moving that blade toward my hand so often. If I'm picking up food with the blade, the edge itself is sliding along the board like so. So there's nothing it can do to cut me. Alright? Remember that important rule. If you have the blade up like this, boom, you're going to cut yourself. Keep that edge in contact with the board like you're trying to shave it. Okay, let's talk for a minute about making mashed potatoes. When we're doing this, we're boiling up these potatoes. Some people would say you're just cooking water into it, but that's actually not the truth. What's happening here is moisture is actually leaving each one of these pieces of potato. And when I pull them out of here, they will be lighter and drier than when they went in. Now this is important. Don't put salt in this. Salt would be sort of like brining. It's going to make the water heavy, and it's going to make it hard for the moisture in the potatoes to leach out. Okay, so we're looking for 2 things here. A, of course, to cook the potato, but B is to get that moisture out of it. And then once we reduce the moisture content in our potatoes, we will then go on to deal with breaking apart the chains of starch that are in those molecules that like to bond. And I'll show you how to break them apart and fix it so that they don't stick back together again. Now our water's boiling for those potatoes. We need to take care of getting these onions starting to cook. So what I'm going to do is to put a medium-high flame under that, and I'm going to put some olive oil down in here. And as far as how much, oh, not a whole lot, but I'm going to need maybe about a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half. And I'll just give it a little light toss to get all of those pieces coated. And we'll let it sit over the heat and just start to soften a little bit. And I want to cover this also, and that way we're going to get some sweating action. The idea is just to soften that just slightly before we put the other vegetables in there. Now don't forget on these onions to keep an eye on them and keep them stirred occasionally. We don't want them browning at all. We just want them turning kind of translucent. Good. See, there's no browning. It's just starting to soften a little. We'll just keep that up until they become nice and translucent. Alright, now here's the thing. How do we know when our potatoes are fully cooked? Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to check it with a fork. You know, you hear people say, put a fork in it. Well, that started to break somewhat easy. That means they're getting there. But they're all still somewhat firm also. So I'm going to give these just a few more minutes. If it starts to take on whitish edges and looks a bit dry on the edge, like it's starting to fall apart, that's the state we're looking to cook this to. It's time for us to discuss, just for a moment, a couple of the instruments that are commonly used for making good quality mashed potatoes. Of course, there's the typical potato masher that you see commonly used where people mash it in the pan. However, that kind of manipulation of potatoes often has a tendency to make them stiff or doughy, and that would be, you know, the result of overworking. The same way that if you use a food processor, it also makes mashed potatoes quite doughy, and also, you know, something like a mixer. Mixers do the same thing. It's overworking it with a machine that really is the enemy of mashed potatoes. So what we're going to do is use one of the two devices that are commonly used. One is called a ricer. It's this little jewel here. It has a bunch of small holes on the bottom, and you put your cooked food right in the cup here and push the plunger down, and it forces that cooked food through the bottom, and just little thin strings of the food come out. And this is a wonderful tool to use when it comes to making mashed potatoes. However, if you've got 3 or 4 pounds of mashed potatoes to work, you have to do this several times, and this can be a little bit tiring. Also, you'll have to drain the mashed potatoes or spoon them out, one of the two, into this. Let me show you another option, a tool that I like to use, especially when you're cooking mashed potatoes for maybe 4 or 6 people. They have this item here, which is a food mill, and very inexpensive. You can get these for under $30, and sometimes I've seen them as low as about $20, and very simple. I'm going to pour the potatoes and water straight into this while this is sitting on another pot to catch the water, and this becomes my colander. All the water runs straight through it. Then I can immediately put this back on the pot I cooked in and work my mashed potatoes out. Very so without overworking the potatoes, we're going to be able to mash them just like that. Now, I need something to catch my water. Let me get another pot here. We'll just hang that on it, and I'm ready to pour those into this when they're finished cooking. And they are. Don't forget to occasionally check. There we go. Now I'm getting a slight amount of brown, which I really didn't want. It won't hurt it. But these are now cooked to translucent. So I'm good on this. I can start adding my other vegetables. Pour in my carrots. Put the garlic in there. I need to wash a little of that garlic out of this. Don't want to waste. And then pour in my chicken stock. Now, very simple. I just need to bring this to a boil, and I'm going to boil this until the onions and the carrots finish cooking down nice and soft. Now, let's take a look at our potatoes. See if they're starting to look the way I wanted them to look. Now, they're starting, pour off some of this water, to take on that softened whitish looking edge I told you about. That's really a good sign right there. If I put my fork into that, it breaks apart easily. See there? It just crumbles. Okay, and the reason it's crumbling like that is because it has less moisture in it. Good thing. Not a problem. So actually, cooking it in water doesn't cook water into the potato. It actually still works the water out of the potato and softens it so that it makes a good mash. Now, the important thing is less about water and more about what are you doing with those starch molecules. We're protecting them. I'm going to take this and pour it right in. There you go. It's easy enough. There. They're fully drained. Now all I have to do is just mill these down into the other pot and finish processing them off. Now when using your food mill, remember on these things, you're going to need to hold it close to your body to control it. Just crank that paddle. This does not take long. Not at all. See, I've already milled about half of them through there. Let's take a look at the bottom side of this and show you what I mean. See all that? You see in that pot well and on the bottom how it pushes it just as little strings? Exactly what we need. See how quick this is? And the beautiful part is it doesn't work the potato too much. It works at one simple, quick time. Just shoves it straight down through the sieve. Once they're pushed through it, that's that. So I just keep working it through. Okay, we're almost done here, and I don't see any reason to nitpick over the rest of this little bit of potato here. Most of what's left up in here has been kicked up from the paddle, and so it has already basically been mashed for us. And I can put it down into the rest of the pot if I wish. So I'll scrape off the bottom. Beautiful, perfect mash. Put up what I have in the top down in here. And we're finished with that mill. So now, all I have to worry about is what I'm going to do with this to make it a perfect mash. Now look in here. See how light and fluffy that is? How it's just perfectly milled out? There's no substance to this now. It's all aerated. And the starch molecules have been broken apart. Now we don't want them rebonding. And to prevent rebonding, we want to keep the amount of work we do on this to a minimum. Now I'm going to put in a little bit of salt. That was about a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half is what I started with. I'll get my butter. Now what I want to do is to take my butter and just a couple of pats. I want to use about a quarter of a stick for this. You can make it more buttery if you wish. The idea here is use butter at room temperature. It's already softened. And when I mix this, it's just going to emulsify it right down into the mash. I'll be doing that with a whisk. Now, we also had that cream. I'm going to put it in there right now. And still have my burner on, still providing heat. There we go. See how they're so light and just coming apart? And that's why we don't want to overwork this. We don't want to use a machine. Now, I want to taste it. Use that fork I used to break it apart with. Very tasty, quite buttery. A slight amount more salt, about another half a teaspoon. Just turn it a couple of times. There we have it, folks. Don't work it any more than that. At this point, you already have the perfect mashed potatoes right there. Well, we have, of course, finished up that mash, looking beautiful. And I have it just setting aside waiting. And on this pot, if we'll notice that some of that liquid is cooked down, the liquid's starting to turn sort of an orangey color, which is good. I'm going to let this cook for just a little bit more. I'm going to give that about probably 20-25 minutes worth of simmering. And once that's simmered up, then we're going to be on to making our cream of potato soup. Okay, we're about ready to put our flavor ingredients. That's what I call that's my flavor base. Okay, it just adds wonderful flavor and richness to the soup. And of course there's our base, which is the mashed potatoes we have here. And then of course that which it makes it cream of. Now I have here 2 cups of cream and 4 cups of milk. I probably won't be using all of that milk. What is important here is that you thin it down to the consistency that you would find desirable for you, okay? It can be a little thicker or a little thinner, and it's fine either way. So keep aside just what you need, and if you don't want to use the cream, that's fine. I'm going to try it this way this time because I like it just a little bit richer and fuller, and I want it to have that buttermilk flavor or the butter fat flavor to it more, and that's one of the things that heavy cream has, is plenty of butter fat in it, and so we're going to use that to make this a much more rich dish. Now to start with, take my lid off here. I'm going to need something to stir this with. So of course we need to reach up, grab ourselves a spoon, and very simply pour our flavor base down in. Now stir that in. And the thing about doing this, don't pour all of your liquid ingredients in all at once, because then you're just going to have a whole bunch of liquid with little lumps floating around it. You got to mix things in slowly, one at a time. And in a minute, I'm going to switch from the spoon over to a whisk, because it'll do a better job of combining it once it gets just a little bit thinner than this. So now I have this wonderful mashed potatoes. If I wanted to serve this as mashed potatoes, that would be absolutely scrumptious with the carrot and the onion and garlic in that. Oh my goodness. Talk about a table treat, huh? Let's put in some of that cream. We'll pour in about, 3/4 of a cup. Now, if I'm working this, I do want it on a low flame. Low to medium low would be good. Alright, I'm starting to get a little more soft, a little more soupy. And now that it's getting this way, I'm going to knock this off the spoon, and I want to break out the whisk. So what I need is my larger whisk. It's going to be this guy over here. The thing about this cream is it's a real full-bodied item. It gives a lot of flavor and a lot of effect. Put the rest of that in there. There we go. A little mess down here. Now, we're looking for a little bit more on the fluid side. This would make right here a very good, heavy soup, very thick soup. want to thin down just a bit more than that. There we go. Good. Now this has come down to a nice consistency. If I want to clean out the bottom edge on my pan, what I need to do with the whisk is hold it with the palm of my hand and push it. The whisk will automatically rotate itself, and it'll do that for the purpose of pushing that outside tine right into that groove. It'll automatically clean it for you. I'm just cleaning off what's on the upper part of the pan that I'll put down in that soup. Now I'm going to bring this up until it's steaming. I don't want to boil it per se, but I do want to bring it up to a good hot temperature. Around 170, 180 will be real good for me. At this time, I want to put in a bit of salt. There we go. Now I did salt this earlier when I had it as mash. My white pepper, I'll start with it. As I mentioned earlier, about a tablespoon, breaking up any lumps. And that gives it a very distinct odor also. Also, I would like to use my mustard. And we're going to be using, see those lumps? Go ahead and press those out because mustard sticks real bad. You don't want lumps of mustard in your soup. You don't want somebody to bite into a lump of mustard. That would be really pungent for them. Okay, so put that down in there. And we'll stir that in. Alright, now in a little bit, after this heats a bit more, we're going to be checking it and tasting it and adjusting seasoning as needed. So if I feel I need a little more pepper in it or a little more mustard or salt, I can just go ahead and add that to it. Remember, taste your food until you'll know exactly what's going on. Now, make sure you watch this. You don't want it to skin over as it's heating. Stir it frequently. You don't want anything sticking. And if you'll notice, it's giving off just a slight amount of steam now. And there's a froth that's building on the edge. And that means it's usually getting around 150, 160 degrees on a potato soup like this. And let's see what this says. Okay. Yeah, this guy says it's right up at about 150 degrees there. And I mentioned before, let's take this not over 180. So this is a good temperature for me to check and find out just what this soup tastes like. It's delicious. It's potatoey. It's a little bit flat. Okay, flat meaning needs a little bit of salt. So I put in about a teaspoon, maybe slightly more, maybe a teaspoon and a quarter there. I'll let that cook in for a few minutes. I'll taste it again. I'm going to sit there and bump and adjust my seasoning as I need. And if I want more of that pepper in it, I'll do that. Right now the mustard's really standing out well. Keep an eye on it. Well, this reached 175 degrees, so I turned the heat off. I've adjusted the seasoning on this, added slightly more white pepper, and it only took about a half a teaspoon extra of salt to get that just perfect. Now, I just want to bowl this up. There we go. want anybody going hungry here, so this thing has to be topped. Looking good. Now I got a little dripping on the side. I'll clean that up. And we're going to dress the top with just a little bit of bacon bits and some cheese, just to make it look a little more colorful, a little more festive, and to add a wonderful element to it. There we go. Like I said, a little bit of bacon on this, and a little bit of cheese. Isn't that beautiful? There we go. We have our cream of potato soup ready to go. Well, that's it. It's just that simple. This beautiful cream of potato soup. Oh man, I've been looking forward to this. This has been one of my favorites since I was young. My mother used to make a cream of potato soup for us. Yeah. You know, it's so full-bodied, creamy, and rich. Yet you taste the potatoes all together. This is perfect. The onions and carrot don't stand out in and of themselves, but they do make a richer product along with that chicken stock. It just adds fullness to it and body. This is a wonderful soup. If you want to make a soup that's going to impress friends, this will do it. It's perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching this show. Thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today. To my subscribers, thank you very much. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. I've got great recipes. Y'all have a good day. Thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today, the show where you can get great recipes and the best techniques are taught. Please subscribe to Texas Cooking Today, where you will always find something hot and ready to eat.